Good evening. Welcome to my COVID-19 diaries. I am in Minneapolis. Today is Friday, May 22nd, and one day is very much like another day. I'm in my house, so that's a plus. But I'm not going anywhere. And so, how do you mark a Friday evening versus a Monday evening or a Tuesday evening? Well, you pour yourself some champagne and you drink a toast to still being alive and the world still revolving around its axis without deviating or plunging into some black hole. So I've been back exactly 8 days now. I'm still in a self-imposed isolation because I wanna spend 2 weeks without any human contact. I'm sure I was pretty safe in Vietnam, but I did take several flights to get back here. I flew from Saigon or Ho Chi Minh City to Narita, Tokyo, and then from Tokyo to Chicago, and Chicago to Minneapolis. So I could have picked something up on one of those flights. So to avoid any problems, I'm gonna avoid problems for other people. I'm gonna stay home for 2 weeks, which means all my food gets, I cook. I cook a lot, but my groceries get delivered, and that's how I'm living. So, Friday evening, nothing else to do, so I thought I'd record one of these things. So, at random, I'm going to pick out a book from my bookshelf behind me, and then I'll talk about it, and you might find it interesting or you might not. Ah, I guess we'll take this book here. So, what did I find at pretty much random? It's John Mortimer, Titmus Regained. Okay, so let me start off by saying that what John Mortimer is known for is, more than anything else, it's this one fat barrister who practices law at the Old Bailey. He drinks cheap claret. His waistcoat is covered with cigar ash, and he is ruled or bullied by a she who must be obeyed. I'm talking, of course, about the inimitable Horace Rumpole. And I discovered John Mortimer by having read stories about Horace Rumpole. Now, Horace Rumpole was a character. He was, I guess, based on John Mortimer's father, who was basically a divorce lawyer who went blind, and he used to travel between his country house, which later became John Mortimer's house, and London, and on the trains he would have someone read his briefs to him, much to the scandal of all other people riding in the train with him, because here were stories of adultery, cruelty, and such things, and they were read loudly so that this blind barrister could come up to speed on the cases. Anyway, so that's how I discovered who John Mortimer. I had no interest in who John Mortimer was, but I was very interested in Horace Rumpole, and then of course the creator was John Mortimer, so I got looking at it, I got interested in him. So now John Mortimer is dead now. well, he was a very interesting man. He started life off as a lawyer, or a barrister as they call them in England. He was married to a woman named Penny Mortimer as a very young man, and Penny had been married before. She had several children and had a very tumultuous relationship. But Penny Mortimer is famous in her own right as a writer, and in fact, she was a writer before Mortimer had any success with writing. So, John Mortimer had, he started writing about, he became a barrister, and he also started writing about Horace Rumpole, a fictional barrister who was dealing more with the lower side of law, the petty criminal law. But Mortimer was a liberal. He defended free speech around the world. In fact, I think he was involved in the Lady Chatterley's book ban case in the UK. He also defended people in Singapore, where they have this draconian libel law, which is used to silence any dissent to the government. So he represented people in cases like that. But now that I want to talk about this particular book. But before I talk about this particular book, we have to talk about its predecessor. And so this is like a book of, it is a series of 2 books. The first book was called Paradise Postponed. And this book is obviously called Titmus Regained. Now, Paradise Postponed was basically a play on Paradise Lost, Milton's Paradise Lost, but the phrase comes from this left-wing liberal vicar, Church of England vicar, who would lead anti-nuclear demonstrations and green movement demonstrations, and he was the main, well, not one of the main characters in the first book, which is called Paradise Postponed. There's a long story, but the bottom line is that Titmus, the Titmus of this Titmus Regained title, Leslie Titmus, a conservative working class boy, much in the mold of Margaret Thatcher, who for some mysterious reasons, I won't give away the plot, the vicar of the first book, Paradise Postponed, leaves his brewery fortune. His family has been running this brewery, and when he dies, in his will, he leaves his fortune to Leslie Titmus, who's just been elected as a Conservative member of Parliament from this area. Well, Leslie is an interesting character. He's been raised by his parents who are very traditional. The father has worked at the brewery owned by the vicar, who then later leaves the shares in this brewery to Leslie Titmus all his life as a accounting clerk. His mother is, she does she's like a skivvy, if you pardon the expression. She cleans houses and she works for the gentry. And Titmus in the first book has this. He goes to this conservative dinner and dance, and he's treated very badly. He's out on a boat, on a punt as they call it, on the river, and he's pushed off, and he's in this hired evening dress, and he falls into the river, and he's humiliated. But anyway, he strikes up a relationship with I shouldn't say, he meets the daughter of the local Conservative Party chairman in his district. And that girl has been, she's sort of an oddball misfit. But anyway, the two get together and they get married. So then Titmus has this has this rise in life, and then we come to this book where Titmus is a very established figure, and it goes through what happens to the rest of his life until his death. So that's those are these 2 books, and I don't want to say much more without giving too much of the plot away. So I want to come back to John Mortimer. John Mortimer wrote a biography called "Clinging to the Wreckage," and I have to say, "Clinging to the Wreckage" is it's a fantastic title. I wish I thought of something like that. There's two biography titles that I think are fantastic. "Clinging to the Wreckage" is one, and the other one, and I'm probably going to screw this up. The other one was written by Anthony Burgess, and the title, he also had a 2-volume biography. The second volume was called, the first volume was an idiotic name, Big Little Wilson, Big God, or Big God, Little Wilson. That was stupid. But the title of his second volume was "You've Had Your Turn," and I think that's a great title, because that's how I feel now. I've had my turn, and I'm just basically, just marking time now. But anyway, I used to think very highly of John Mortimer, and I thought, well, what a fantastic guy. I read his biography, and well, most biographies are self-laudatory. So, but then later on, I found out that he treated women very badly. In fact, there was a woman, I can't think of her name. Her last name is Craig. She was an English actress, and in the US, you might remember her from a show called Butterflies, in which she plays this housewife who nearly has an affair with another man who she finds attractive, though I think is repulsive, but never mind. But this was a pretty popular show on PBS here. It's called Butterflies, and he had an affair with her. She had a child from him, but he completely took no responsibility. He was quite awful. So that made me think a little less of him, but I can't say anything bad about about Horace Rumpole. Horace Rumpole is great. Horace Rumpole likes poetry. Horace Rumpole always quotes from the Arthur Keller Couch edition of the Oxford Book of English Poetry, and I have that on a bookshelf somewhere. And that, for me, is the probably the ultimate collection of the Oxford books on poetry over the years. And one final note: I had a cat, a wonderful cat. When I first moved into this house, I have a patio door on this side, and when I'd come home, there'd be this black cat, and he'd be on his hind legs, and he'd be pawing the patio door, wanting to be let in. I said, who is this cat? So I let the cat in, and I fed him, and he stayed, and he was very friendly for a few days. Then I let him out, and he disappeared. So I said, shit, what happened to this cat? And then a few days later, the cat came back in, and the cat now had a collar, and there was a note on the cat's collar. And the note said, I think we've been showing a cat. I'm your neighbor across the street, so give me a call. So I called her up, and she said, yes, that's my cat. And the cat's name, if you will forgive this, was that she had named was Diamante. And she said, if you want the cat, you can have him. I said, okay, yeah, I'll take the cat. So the cat came over, and the cat decided that he was much happier living in my house rather than just cross the street, this other house. And so I said, well, I've got to rename this cat. I mean, there's no way a cat should go through life being called Diamante. So I renamed that cat Horace, not after the poet Horace, but after Horace Rumpole. And that's the last story I have about Mr. Mortimer. Well, I hope that you are safe, and you are safely negotiating the times that we're living in. I hope you're not having to go out and work at dangerous things, and I know that's not always possible, and there's a certain amount of privilege involved in being able to stay at home. But I hope that you will come out stronger and better on the other side of this, and I can't wait for this to be over. And certainly it better be over before November, because I want to leave Minnesota by November, because it's going to get perishingly cold here. Take care, and I will see you soon.